Hey everyone, welcome to Reddit Readout. Today we are checking out Am I the A-hole? Story 1. AITA for telling my friend her daughter is banned from my home after accusing my daughter of bullying. This is some drama, so I will try to keep it as clear as possible. My daughter used to have a friend named Kot. They were besties in preschool until middle school but slowly grew apart. They are both in 8th grade. Now my daughter is popular and Kot isn't. I have heard about it from my friend a lot. My daughter invited a few girls ice skating at the beginning of the month. Kot wasn't invited and they had a text fight about it. It wasn't a pretty fight, I've read it. Overall friendship completely over. A few days later I get a call from the principal for bullying. I got in and the evidence was the text fight and areas were missing. Kot deleted her response so it just looked like my kid was bullying her. I showed the principal the whole thing on my daughter's phone. Basically got dismissed and teachers will keep an eye on it. My daughter kinda hates Kot now. The issue is retracted an invite to Kot for the holiday party at my home tomorrow. I got a call from my friend is pissed, saying we should help the girls make up. I told her she is banned from my home and she called me a jerk. Kot is apparently extremely sad and I need more opinions. Story 2. AITA for calling my brother a terrible dad. I recently went to the US on a holiday. Normally, I don't watch American sports, but my nephew does. He once told me he's a huge fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers team, so I decided to buy him a jersey as a surprise. He really loved it. Then a week later I dropped by and he told me my brother gave the jersey to his girlfriend's son. I talked to my brother and he admitted he really did it since it's his girlfriend's son's birthday and he wanted to impress her. I was so mad I said to my brother, I didn't know you're a terrible dad. Now he's saying I had no right to call him that since as the father he has the final say over what his son owns. He told me I should mind my own business. Was it wrong of me to insult him over that decision? Update: I'm going to go talk to my brother's girlfriend and ask her to return the jersey. We'll update again after talking to her. Update 2, already went to talk to her. At first she was skeptical but I showed her the receipt. I also told her she could just confront my brother and see his reaction. She confronted him, returning the jersey after seeing how he attempted to lie his way out. So my nephew has the jersey back now. Story 3. AITA for telling my 29F husband 34M not to call his ex-wife his wife. So my husband, Daniel for privacy, and I have been married for just under a year and I love him very much. He has an 8-year-old daughter, Jane for privacy, from his previous marriage who I love as my own. He's always been respectful and patient, which is part of why I decided to marry him. We met right before the pandemic when he had been recently widowed the year before, so we tried to take things slow. We ended up quarantining together and after 3 years we decided to tie the knot. The wedding ceremony was everything a girl could dream of and we've honestly had very few issues in our first year as a couple. It wasn't until we went to pick up Jane from her summer camp that I started seeing an issue. I went to meet up with him at the front desk. I found him chatting with the camp coordinator, which is all well and good until I overheard what he was saying. He mentioned that my wife made me this jacket actually. She was really good at all that sewing stuff. He was referring to his ex-wife, Alyssa for privacy, not me. It bugged me a little but I brushed it off as a one-time thing, an accident. We don't talk about Alyssa much unless we're around Jane, and even then he usually refers to her as Jane's mom. I never heard him call her his wife, especially now that we were married. It wasn't until a week or two later that I learned he does this a lot. We were at a get-together with some friends from work, my first time meeting them. It was all good until one of them asked me questions about baseball. I admitted I didn't know much about the sport and he said that was weird because Daniel had mentioned I was really good at the game and even played some in college. It left me very confused. After talking to some more guys I found out this was a common issue. A lot of them thought Alyssa and I were the same person because Dan called us both his wife. At this point I got really offended. We had been married for 10 months and he didn't even call Alyssa his ex-wife yet. I was super awkward and explaining to people that he still called his ex-wife his wife was utterly humiliating, especially the amount he does it, not just one or two people but the whole office. When we got home we fought. He said he didn't even think about it that way, that since he never divorced Alyssa he never stopped thinking about her as his wife. He still stands by the fact that Alyssa is his wife, despite how embarrassing it is to explain to people that I'm not his second wife but rather his new wife and Alyssa his ex. I told him that if he wasn't ready to move on then he shouldn't have married me, if he can't commit to being my husband then he shouldn't get to call me his wife. I spent the next night at my sister's house ignoring his calls. We recently started to smooth things over by not talking about them but I can tell that this is going to be a sore spot in the marriage I am trying so desperately to save. Story 4. AITA for being pissed at my future Sil. I, 27F, have been with my 29M fiancé for 7 years total and engaged for 3. We are very in love and have enjoyed letting life happen very naturally without planning too much in advance. We did things a bit out of the traditional order and built a house together, got engaged, had a baby, 16 months old, and are now excited to start planning our wedding for 2025. As weddings can be expensive we thought it would be responsible to pick a date in 2025 to give ample time to save money towards the wedding and plenty of time to plan things without the time stress because we aren't the type to plan things. We had already been saving like crazy the past year so we had a good chunk of funds to use for deposits for the big vendors. We recently paid a $2,000 non-refundable deposit for our venue which secures our wedding date in October 2025. I was chatting to my future Sil today and I mentioned that her brother and I are super excited because we had booked our venue and her response was oh me and her boyfriend's name were thinking of getting married in September 2025 so that's perfect and then went on to ask a lot of questions regarding where we are getting married and how much everything was including what each deposit is required. I answered pretty vaguely because it was quite invasive and not in an excited for us way, but circled back to what she meant by so that's perfect. She explained that she hadn't started wedding planning or looking into venues however they are definitely getting married in September 2025. I politely explained that having a wedding a month before ours may make it difficult for guests to travel and attend both weddings, and that maybe earlier in the year or in the middle of the year might be a good idea or even September 2024 but a month before is a bit too close, and we have now paid thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits so it's not like we could move dates even if we wanted to. She doubled down that they can't afford a wedding for next year, her partner's business is too busy at the start of 2025 and she doesn't want a winter wedding. She's now not talking to me and I feel like I have started some family drama when my intention was just to share some exciting news with her to begin with. I can't help but to feel disappointed that there is now suddenly this drama/weird rivalry that I want nothing to do with. We can both have beautiful wedding days and a few months in between really wouldn't bother me but literally the month before? AITA to expect her to pick a different time to get married when she has literally never mentioned getting married at this time ever before? Story 5. AITA for wanting to make Christmas dinner at my house. Myself, F, and my sister both live in the same town 400 miles from the rest of our close family. My sister is due her baby not long after Christmas. I live on my own with 2 dogs and a cat. My sister is currently living on her own with no pets. My mum, with my mum and dad's 2 dogs, is moving to live with, predominantly, my sister for a year to help out with the baby soon. Which is fantastic however I do have a slight issue about Christmas. I offered to make Christmas dinner for us all at my home with a garden for the 4 dogs meaning they could be out the way if the inevitable happened. Obviously my mum and sister will not be drinking not pertinent but worth noting. However a decision has been made that my mum will make us dinner at my sister's flat, no garden, just in case my sister goes into labor so she can be in her own home. Worth to note she is not expecting to have a home birth. I, obviously, have said I would take my parents' dogs whilst my sister goes into labor/hospital. But where does that leave me in the event it does happen Christmas Day? Am I supposed to stay at my sister's flat for however long if she does go into labor and forget about my cat or do I go home and have no meal in? Basically the way I see it is if I were to be arranging the meal, then even if she did go into labor, all the dogs would already be where they needed to be. My mum could still then take my sister home until needed to be taken to hospital without any other distractions. I could then make the meal and there would be the food available then for a few days after the baby was born. Story 6. AITA. My girlfriend wants me to pay for everything even though she makes nearly double my income. Let's start by saying I'm in the US and she's from Puerto Rico, a US territory, so she's a American as well, but from a very different cultural background. We started dating with the known fact that I had recently gotten out of a severely abusive relationship where I had been put in massive debt by my ex. She knows I also work a job that does not make nearly as much as she does. I work private security and she is a full-time RN. We agreed on 50/50ths for dates and I often cover full dinners at times even when I cannot afford it. Recently she's been sending me TikToks speaking about if he loves you he'd pay for everything, and I confronted her about it. I asked if she was suggesting I pay for everything and she said yes, but due to her cultural upbringing it's considered a sign of love. That if I loved her I'd pay and take care of her. I told her it's not in the cards for me right now, and that I'm trying to go to school and become a RN myself so that I could possibly do what she wants. Am I the asshole for saying I'm not able to completely support her even though she has way more money than me and is completely independent otherwise? I thought 50/50ths was fair and financially understandable. Am I wrong? Edit. I will also like to note my last relationship was over a year ago. Story 7. AITA. For leaving my roommates high and dry. I am a university student living in a house with 3 other girls, 2 of which I lived with last year, E and S. It started off small at first. E would complain to S and F about how messy I am. I'm not messy at all. Sometimes I leave a plate or 2 in the sink for a day or more as I have to work night shifts and balance uni. But, I always wash up and the plates never sit in the sink for long. They always leave tons of stuff in the sink and it can sit in the sink for up to a week. E also complains about my hair being in the shower drain, but I always pull my hair out of the drain after every shower. But she still blames me for the hair. Even though the hair in the drain is usually blonde or brown, my hair is dyed a burgundy red. There is much more but it's too long. After realizing E was talking about me, I asked S about it and she agreed that I'm not messy and E exaggerates and blames me for stuff I've not done. ADP. I was too stressed to address E directly so I ignored it. E got worse. When I'd invite people over she'd give them dirty looks despite having her friends over a lot. She also started making me feel unwelcome in group activities like when they'd all go out. When the other girls invited me, E would get agitated and sometimes roll her eyes, making me say no to the plans. She ignores my presence when I'm in the room and has started talking over me, purposely changing the topic to something I couldn't relate to, like a wealthy people topic. All of them are wealthy and no I'm not. To add on, my room started to get a really bad mold problem that affected my clothes and health. My landlord said to turn up the heating and buy a humidifier in order to help the mold, but until my landlord visited in person he refused to let me turn up the heating as she didn't want to pay more for the bills. We all split the bills equally, meaning my health for worse. ADP. I had enough and without telling E or the others I started to look at moving out. ADP. I still wasn't sure I wanted to do it. Once I had booked a viewing I spoke with E and F and explained I wanted to move out. E and F begged me to stay and I said I'd let them know my choice 2 days later, but I'd like to stay in a house with them if we could sort stuff out. They agreed and said they'd wait until after my viewing to contact the landlord of our house. They also acted really nice and apologized for being bitchy. When I woke up the next morning they'd gone behind my back and emailed the landlord saying we didn't want our current house anymore. When talking to some people they said I was in the wrong for starting to look at houses without telling them and that they had every right to do that. AITA. I also told them before most uni house go on the market for sale and waiting 3 days wouldn't have hurt their search. That's all for today. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.